is my studio. I moved in here and got all this stuff set up in the last month or so, and actually almost everything that's in this room I've gotten since this year has started, which is pretty crazy. I used to like just work on a laptop and the mouse and headphones and speakers, but like all this other stuff in here has been very recent. So this is the first kind of keyboard or like analog synthesizer that I got in December, and this is called the Prophet Rev 2. It's by this company Dave Smith Instruments, which has been around for a long time. This is just like one of the craziest things ever. I honestly don't even really use it that much. I just get like lost in it. Like it's so crazy and complex, and like has all these different things that you can do with it, all these different like automations, and like this like something called like a modulation matrix where you can go in and like make this thing do like something to these things, and like all kinds of crazy stuff. But this is especially good for like pad sounds or just like really nice like warm analog, just the nice crispy like modern sounds. This is called the Juno-106, which is a lot more popular, and this is I think from 1984, like this exact model, if I'm not mistaken. I got this from some random dude in Hermosa Beach like 3 months ago that I found on Craigslist, and he said that it was like perfectly sound, and of course I bought it from him and it broke in like literally 15 minutes or something after I got home. These are notoriously terrible as far as reliability, always break, but they sound absolutely amazing. I'm like a huge Tame Impala fan. I know Kevin Parker uses these a lot. It was used on like every record in the 80s. It's just a classic synthesizer, the Juno-106. And what I like about this one instead of this one is it's a lot more simple. It has like a couple of sounds that are built in, and then like, even though this might look a little bit complex, like just a couple little levers you can play with. But other than that, it's just really good at what it does when it works. And yeah, this is one of my favorites. So this is by a company called Moog. I think I'm pronouncing that right, Moog. I don't believe it's Moog, even though it looks that way. This is called the Subsequent 37. I just got this, I think 2 or 3 months ago. I was killing some time with a friend of mine that was in town, and he forced me to stumble into Guitar Center with him, and like every single time I go into that store, I end up leaving with something. And this was the curse that was given to me that time. But this is like iconic synth. Moog has been around for a long minute. They're really good for like bass tones. But yeah, this has just been incredible to me. It's really good for these like just really gnarly, like analog sounds. I'm honestly terrible at playing keyboard. Yeah, really great bass sounds that I just do not think you can achieve on like anything that's on the computer. So I use a MacBook Pro, which is pretty standard, nothing too interesting. This is by LG, and they actually made this with Apple, and it's an ultrafine display, so it's like really pretty. I actually just got out of a small crisis with these. Right when I moved here, mine broke, and these like notoriously break, so I honestly maybe can't recommend them too much, but it is the best monitor I've ever used. It's like, it's so pleasant to look at. So these are the Genelec M040s. I don't really see these super often. I used to be an avid KRK user, but I've had these for 2 or 3 years now, and they just sound phenomenal. They're really good powered speakers. They have a lot of bass. I don't have a subwoofer in here or anything, but yeah, they just sound great. Super like accurate production, and like when music bangs on these, they bang anywhere, which is a great sign. And then I also use 2 pairs of headphones when I'm making music. One are these, which are like the god tier Sennheiser HD800. I got these a couple months ago as well. I used to use the 600s, but these are just like on another level. I honestly don't even know like what's going on with any of the technology in here, but they're called open back headphones, so there's like air and space kind of going on. I'm probably botching all of these definitions. It makes it so you get like a lot more open sound, and it's almost like listening to music on speakers. But these are like super accurate, because when you're making music, you want to be able to hear exactly what the sounds are. A lot of other headphones like Beats or like any consumer headphones are meant to sound good. Headphones like these are meant to sound like accurate, not necessarily just super pretty. And then I use these as well, which like every single producer and DJ in the world has. These are Audio Technicas. These are closed back headphones. They're not quite as nice as these ones, but they still sound really great. They're still really accurate, and like I just like listening to music on like as many different sources as I possibly can. Like I always do these test, the speaker test, the Apple headphone test, and the car test is the most important one. I love these diptyque candles. Very, very essential to have candles in the studio at all times. I've got this little hand ball. I'm not really sure what these are called, but because I just really never leave this room for many, many days of the week, and this keeps like the circulation going, which is super important. So this is called the Apollo 8. It's by Universal Audio. I also got this within the last couple months. Before that, I was using the Apogee Duet, which is like a much smaller audio interface. But this is basically what an audio interface is, more or less, is it kind of just controls the things that you're putting into the computer or putting into your software, and then it controls the outputs as well. So like all these instruments and all the things I've been talking about today, guitar, bass, microphone, whatever it might be, they all go into this, and then they go out of that into the speakers or headphones or whatever it might be, and then of course into the computer. This one is especially amazing for a lot of reasons. It has like 8 inputs, which is great, so that's why all this stuff in here is able to be plugged in at all times. Universal Audio in particular is just a phenomenal company. I highly recommend, honestly, with no endorsement, because you can go in and essentially set in like a software on the computer a bunch of different plugins or effects to tracks in real time. So usually when you're like recording guitar or playing or singing microphone or doing anything like that, you record and then you put all the effects in on the computer. The thing is with that is that you can't hear the effects in real time because usually they take up a lot of processing power and there's just like a delay or something, so you can't really work with that. But what's amazing with this is like if I have someone here recording vocals, I can put like auto-tune and reverb and like a whole vocal effects chain right on their voice before it even goes into the computer. So it just loads right in real time and like they can hear it in the headphones. And I may be mistaken, but I don't think that there's any other company that has anything like that. So any Universal Audio stuff is phenomenal, and I've been absolutely loving this. And then right below this, I have something called a Furman, which is like a power conditioner. So it's similar to those like long extension cables with all the plugs in it that you would just have in any like dorm room or any room ever. This one is just a little bit different. Filters a lot of the power, and I think, again, I'm gonna get this phrasing wrong, but it like conditions the power, I think, and it puts it all into like one ground. So if there's ever like an electrical explosion or any kind of problems, it makes it so like all of your stuff doesn't blow up, which is obviously a pretty important one. So this is like the most easy standard little mic setup ever, but just a stand. This is called an isolation chamber, I believe, and this, as you can see, there's like a lot of foam in this room. Foam helps absorb different frequencies, different sounds. There's this kind, like just normal acoustic panels, and then bass traps, which are in like the other side of the room. So there's a lot of reverb tail in any room. Like when you talk, you can hear your voice travel through the room real quick. This kind of prevents that from happening or cuts it off quite a bit, so you have more room to work with as like a vocal engineer. This is called a pop filter, and this makes it so when you're talking and you're making like s or any kinds of those sounds, it like kind of diffuses them before it goes into the microphone, which is actually really important. And these are only like 15 bucks, 10 bucks or something. And then this is also an Audio Technica mic. I got this pretty recently. It was only like a couple $100 or so, but I actually used to have their initial line, and they've all been great to me. Like I just had someone in here recording on like a $50 like little stage mic, and it worked great as well. Like as long as you have like foam and some kind of little chamber to work in or a booth to work in, and as long as the microphone is like decently good enough to pick up sound and you know what you're doing on the engineering side, you don't really need like any expensive mic, at least in my experience. This one is an Audio Technica. It's the AT4033A. And this has been very good to me. I recorded probably about half the vocals on my new EP with this microphone. I recorded the one that I sang on with this microphone, and it was able to make me sound at least passable, so I highly recommend that one. So this guitar, her name is Ginger. I've had this since I was in, I think 8th grade is when I first got this. I've been playing guitar my whole life. It's actually how I got into music. I used to be incredibly avid into guitar, playing like hours and hours and hours every day. And this was a gift from my parents back kind of in my guitar pinnacle. This is a really low-key brand. It's called Tom Anderson. I think they're only made in California. I really don't ever see any of these. I don't know why I picked this like hideous orange color, but truly the most beautiful sounding guitar I think I've ever played in my life. It sounds great on so many different things. It also has something called the Floyd Rose little situation down here. So usually when you're playing a guitar, you're tuning it on these tuners up here. but on this it actually has something that locks it in so you don't ever touch any of that, and you tune it down here. So the benefit of that is it usually stays in tune much longer. It's a huge pain to change the strings. Every guitar sound I think I've played on any song has been with this one. So this is just a really standard Fender Precision bass. I got this a couple months ago as well, and I haven't been playing it a whole lot. I find that with this and with the guitar and with these keyboards, really any kinds of instruments, they just help you think a little bit differently than like a producer that's just working on laptop. Like as I said before, my studio space was mostly just a laptop and headphones and speakers and maybe like one little MIDI controller until the beginning of this year. But I've found that what's been inspiring me a lot lately, and my new music or with any music I've been working on with anyone else, has just been the ability to like actually pick something up. Like when you're just staring at like a black screen all the time, it's a really different approach than when you can actually like feel something and touch something. And I tend to get like really lasered in as well when I'm working on music. Like glasses on, headphones on, just like completely tunnel vision into the box. And that can be great sometimes, but I find that a lot of the decisions that I make, especially after I've been working for hours and hours, end up being like, I just don't really think through it too well. So like when you're actually playing a bass or you're sitting down with a keyboard and you're like physically touching the sounds, it makes you think of each instrument like actually as an instrument. Whereas I feel like when you're just making music on the computer and you're using all like virtual instruments, it tends to just become a lot more of like a mechanical process and a lot less musical and a lot less like about really thinking about what you're doing. At least that's been the case for me. So these are not usually out. I actually don't use them a whole lot, but definitely worth mentioning. This is called a Midi Fighter. I don't know if they actually make this particular version anymore, but this is made by this company, iconic company called DJ Tech Tools, based out of San Francisco. You may have seen these on YouTube before. I know Sean Wasabi likes to play with these a lot. He has his own like crazy custom one. But what this company basically does is they take like these Japanese arcade buttons, and it makes it so most controllers have these pads, which are great, but they don't have like a click to them. But these have like a real click. So if you're playing drums or you're like triggering anything, you get like a good sense of tactile feedback, and you can also like click really, really, really fast if you get good at it. And that's just not something you can do on these. So again, I used to be really into like playing live drums. There's this guy, ARP Music, that I was like really, really into when I was younger and like getting started in production. These days I've mostly been like programming and drawing my drums in and all that, but this is really good for any live performance stuff or anything where you're like playing in real time and you need to get like some good feedback. And then this is the Ableton Push 2. Honestly, also don't use this a whole lot, but this is made by Akai and Ableton actually. It's the only like proper Ableton controller. But the idea behind this is basically that you can like plug it into your computer and then like almost close your computer and make like a whole song on this, which is really good. I like using this when I like can't come up with anything. But usually I find, especially with music production, like when it starts to become more like a second or a sixth sense, I usually just sit and think. And then like when I know what I want to make, I just go in and like kind of click it away. And then I'll like take a break and sit down with an instrument, or maybe sit down with this or sit down with something else. But for the most part, I think these are really good for like house DJs or house producers or people that are making stuff that like builds, like a song that kind of builds all the way through, as opposed to a song that has like specific individual parts like a verse and chorus and all that, because that's hard to do without a mouse and keyboard. But this is still really cool. It also lights up in a bunch of crazy ways. It's a heavy one.
Oh, yeah.
God, how heavy this is. Just like so much heavier than it looks. I'm also just a frail human. So this is called the Yamaha DX7. It's very heavy. But this is, I think this one is from 1980 or maybe the late 70s. I got this a couple months ago. Again, I think I found it off Craigslist, but I bought it from this really nice guy in North Hollywood that has like his own little synth shop where he like repairs and collects a bunch of different stuff. But this is actually really good for anyone that's looking to get into buying like an analog keyboard. So basically there are, as like a quick explanation, there are MIDI keyboards which don't make any sound. They might look like this, or they might have a zillion keys and a billion buttons and pads or whatever, but all they do is just trigger things on the computer. So like the instrument has to be on the computer, and then you play the piano and it sends data to the computer and then plays the sound through the computer. If you're buying like an analog synthesizer or keyboard or anything like that, it actually produces its own sound. So this produces a whole range of different sounds. It literally sounds to me like the late 70s and 80s, like nearly every song that came out of that era, I think, used this to some capacity, honestly. Like, if you just go through some of the presets, there's like the Top Gun soundtrack and like all kinds of crazy things in here. But I love using this. It has a really good electric piano preset that's, again, was used in a lot of 80s music and like early 90s R&B. I love using that for any kind of R&B stuff. It just has like a really pretty sound to it. But for anyone looking to get into analog gear, I think you can find these for $200, $250. It's super easy to use, they sound amazing, and you can actually go online and download like whole banks of different sounds and just like load them on really quickly. So this is a really good one. It's called the DX7. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to Sidewalk Talk for having me again. I really don't get any opportunity to like geek out about all this stuff, so I'm pretty sure I hit you up to do this interview. Thank you so much for coming through to my studio. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and like and subscribe.